Chairman, thank you. Mr. Powell, good to see you here today. Like my colleagues, I continue to be deeply concerned with the inflation we're seeing in the economy and its real-life impact on Montana families. When I go back home, I hear the top three concerns from Montanans. It's inflation, it's inflation, it's inflation. It's the price of gas, it's the price of groceries. CPI inflation grew 8.6% year over year in May, the highest increase since December of 1981. In Montana and other mountain states, as you're aware, inflation grew by 9.4% versus a year earlier. This rate of inflation is unsustainable for Montanans and Americans alike. For months, Republicans in Congress and even some Democrats, like former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, warned of the massive inflationary risk of the $2 trillion March of 2021 stimulus package, what that posed to the economy. In fact, just pulled up the Washington Post article from March 29th, 2021. I remember being in this very room, similar hearings, warning our colleagues about the risks of moving through a $2 trillion spending package when we had $1 trillion of unspent COVID money still remaining in December of the prior year. Let me quote from that Washington Post article. It says, Summers, of course, remember Secretary Treasurer Clinton and economic advisor to Barack Obama, a Democrat, Summers, age 66, who drafted economic blueprints for the past two Democratic presidents and was a top candidate to lead the Federal Reserve Board under President Obama, has emerged in recent weeks as the loudest critic of President Biden's approach to reviving the pandemic-era U.S. economy. The Harvard University professor who advised Biden for a time last summer warns, and this is key, that the president's stimulus plan may trigger the highest inflation in more than half a century and could cost Democrats the chance to make lasting investments in the economy. There were many of us warning the administration and our colleagues across the aisle of blindly moving forward on a purely partisan basis to jam through that $2 trillion package and the inflationary risk associated with it. Now, with inflation at a 40-year high, these same Democrats are continuing their ill-advised effort to revise President Biden's sweeping Build Back Broke package, no matter the warning signs that are flashing right now in all of our faces. Chairman Powell, Mr. Summers has suggested several years of greater than 5% unemployment might be necessary to contain inflation. Would you agree with that assessment?
I guess I would say that I don't want to comment on other other forecasts generally, but my assessment is that it's going to depend to a significant extent on factors like how long does the war run and how long does it take supply chains to improve and that kind of thing. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. I would have a lot of humility about trying to, predict with any clarity exactly where the economy is going to be in, the next 3 years, for example. But my assessment, though, is that there's certainly paths to get inflation down to 2% with outcomes that are substantially less, troubling than what you just read.
You've characterized a soft landing as getting back to 2% inflation while keeping the labor market strong. What's your confidence that the Fed can achieve this goal without causing a recession?
So I think that is our goal. That's our intention. I think it's going to be very challenging. We've never said it was going to be easy or straightforward. It's going to be challenging, and the events of the last few months have certainly made it more challenging. And nonetheless, there are pathways through which that could happen. And in particular, what we saw in the early part of 2021 when inflation went up was very strong demand surged against what were unanticipated supply-side constraints. And the result was prices went up a lot, much more than could be explained by just the increase in demand. And so in principle, if demand can move back down, then inflation could move back along that path just as quickly as it went up. In principle, no one's guaranteeing that, but The idea is this is not the same, there are relationships in the economy for how quickly inflation would move compared to demand moving. This could be an unusual situation because we have had what is in effect a vertical supply curve where there isn't any more supply, or a very steep supply curve. So you get really sharp increases in prices. You could get sharp declines for the same reason. So that could be a difference. And I think we'll find out, ideally. But ultimately, we need to see progress on the supply side. And we're not waiting for it. Our job and our tools work on demand. And that's what we're working on now, is getting demand down to a more sustainable level so that supply can catch up and is in better balance with demand.
Chairman Powell, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daines. Senator Ross,